It's always a party at Patchworks. Let's get this party started. Woot woot! Hi everyone, this is Julie from Patchworks, and I am so excited that you are here joining us today to talk about panel quilts. Today we are going to be featuring our Easy Panel Worksheet that we have available to download for free. Check out the links below, and we are going to be talking about how to adapt a pre-printed panel to finish it off super simple. Now, of course, you might want to do something more elaborate or include it on the back of a quilt or simply finish it up and have it as a door banner, but sometimes you want just a little bit more, and we came up with this fun worksheet to help you calculate what you'd like to do. So I have two samples behind me, and then we're going to be working on a different panel altogether. This one here, this super cute Santa panel, is a 36 by width of fabric, and the panel goes all the way out to here, okay? So this pre-printed panel part here, this piece is pre-printed. We put this guy on and this one on. This inner border here, we did not put a cornerstone. We only put the cornerstone on the outside. And then we used a super cute striped binding. I love using striped binding, especially a candy cane like this. My timber nomies that I have over here, the panel goes up through the plaid, has this fun little border here, is our little timber nomie, and then repeat here. The black snowflake is an inner border. I have fussy cut a little snowman here, and then we have a larger cornerstone here. And the width of this was determined by the border itself. Now, this particular border is from a pre-printed border stripe, and what we did was kind of fun. We used part of it up here on our top and bottom, and a different part of it on our sides. So you can see here that the outer part is red on the sides, and the outer part here is black. So you really can do whatever you want with the panels and finishing them off, as well as when you take care of using the convenience border prints. We are going to be working with Kim Schaefer's 24-inch by width of fabric. Look at this. It is bright and fun. We are going to be including the whole part, including the peppermints up at the top. So it's going to be like we have an extra cornerstone there. This is available in two colorways, and we chose to use the white background. I'm going to be using a green here. This is a Kim Schaefer green for our inner border. We're going to use the peppermint candies for our cornerstones. I'm going to be using a beautiful fun print with mini trees in the line for our outside border. And then we are going to be using this really cool stripe for our binding. If you are not sure for the exact calculations of what you'd like to do with a 24-inch panel, I recommend 1.5 yards for your outside border and 1/2 yard of 3 different fabrics. That way you can play around and you don't have to make any final decisions until you get home to your cutting table. So the first thing we want to do is we would press this, and I did press this, and I used some starch to make sure it was nice and crisp and that I could shape as well as I needed to if there was any distortion. This particular one came off the bolt and was in our package super nice. I just had to get out a few wrinkles. Before we do any measuring, what we're going to do is we are going to trim to size, okay? So rather than worrying about what size we think it should be, we're only going to worry about what size it actually is. All right, that sounds good to me. So when we trim this, we are going to lay it out, and I like to, I don't know if you can see this here, so this has a white border printed all the way around the edge. Now if I trimmed to the 1/4 inch and then I tried to stitch exactly on it, I might be sad because I might end up going a little off. So what I like to do when I square it up is that I actually go less than a 1/4 inch for trimming it up around the sides. So let me show you. We're going to go to the overhead here. And for the overhead, or for our trimming up, we're going to start on our short side, okay? I'm going to use my nice big ruler, my 6.5 inch strip ruler. My favorite is the Big Daddy that we make here. It was designed by Trudy Hughes. And I am going to line up, and you can see here how if I line it up perfectly, how it's not quite straight. I don't know if you can see that. So we're going to fussy it as we manipulate this, okay? So I can see here that this candy cane is less than 1/8 of an inch in. I want to make sure that I leave just a little bit as I'm stitching around in it. So when I do my 1/4 inch, I am just going to have my 1/4 inch line be right on the inside of the screen printing. And for alignment here, I'm going to use my nail, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to look at, after I have this lined up, I'm going to get another view here so that you can see it. So we are just going to kind of manipulate it, right? It's just fabric. And this is a convenience craft type sewing. So some of the, like you wouldn't normally use your thumbnail to arrange fabric if you were precision piecing. But we want to make sure to take advantage of all the great parts of this panel. So this is how we are finessing this, okay? So finessing with the thumbnail. Okay, I'm going to bring around another camera to see here. Okay, so we can see that this positioning is just giving us that little bit inside that line here, okay? All the way up. Got it? So now that we have this positioned, we're going to cut it. All right, so I'm going to very carefully cut and take this away. I'm going to repeat to the other side. All right, so we're lining it up. We're going to use our thumb to finesse this a little bit. Make sure our ruler extends the whole distance here. I bet you never thought that you'd see Julie finessing fabric like this. But it's what we do with panels. Panels are super awesome, but it's impossible how they're made for them to be printed perfectly straight on the grain. So we have to take advantage of some manipulations. Now this one here, okay, now my ruler is not, nor are my arms, 45 inches long, right? So we're just going to start on the one edge, make sure that it's nice and flat. I'm going to line up here at the bottom my T, so you can see my perpendicular line. Maybe you can't see that with the shadow. we're going to do the same thing here, okay? So we're going to line up this so I can have a nice 90 degree, even if it means that I'm manipulating it just a titch to get that, okay? And then I'm going to trim, and I'm going to only trim up as far as my ruler is, and then we'll reposition. Once again, this is not a trick that you'd normally do with precision piecing, but we're working with a convenience panel. So sometimes some of the rules don't quite apply. Okay, we're shifting it down, and now we're lining this up again, okay? So we can get that kind of scant quarter happening with our alignment, using my thumbnail again to kind of pull it back. And so when you're saying, Julie, I don't have a big enough space at home. Well, I'm not laying it down completely. I'm working with it chunk by chunk. Do you see that? So I'm thinking, you know, wherever space your cutting mat is a big enough space for you to work on this, okay? And it goes just a little bit farther than the edge of, so we're going to go down to the bottom here. And once again, align the top to make sure I have a nice 90 degree. And trim it off. Okay, then we're going to do on the other side. So as you can see here, I'm not fretting about this being, about trying to make sure that I'm working in a perfect rectangle. I'm trusting that the design is a rectangle, okay? We didn't piece the inside, it was printed. So we are trusting that design. And it usually works pretty well. Just a little bit more, okay? A little bit more finessing here. Manhandling, if we shall. I love these bright colors here. They're super nice, very vibrant. We were talking the other day in the shop here, wondering if designers' homes match their palettes. So I'm going to have to talk to Kim, because this is Kim Schaefer, and she's, you know, from Wisconsin and visits the shop a lot. And we'll have to ask her for pictures of her Christmas tree at home to see if her Christmas tree in real life matches her bright, whimsical decor. Okay, so let's look. Ta-da-da! Here we go. All right, some nice even edges, and this is what we are calling our squared up panel. What's our next step? Well, our next step is that we are going to go to our Easy Panel Worksheet and we're going to measure it, okay? So I am going to measure my width is 23 inches, so I'm going to write that down. Probably should have a black marker here. And then for my length, what I often do when I'm measuring a larger piece like this is that I fold it in half. Sometimes when we stretch it to measure it, we end up stretching it to be a little bit bigger than what it actually is. So I'm folding it in half, and I'm going to measure it here, and it is 42. Okay, So I am going to make some strips, okay? So in reality, we are, when we're framing this out here and we're putting this cornerstone in, these actually match the width of what we just wrote down here. So I need 2 inner border strips that are 23 inches wide, or 23 inches long, and 2 that are 42 inches long. So I need a total of 4 strips. I chose to have my inner border for this Easy Panel Worksheet be 2.5 inches, just in case if I wanted to use a jelly roll or something, if I had a solid jelly roll. And 2.5 just seemed like a nice size. If I was going to be convenience cutting, I could even use my Shape Cut Pro for cutting that. In this case, we're just going to be using our strip ruler. So when I cut my inner border, I'm going to use the green for the inner border. And I went ahead and I pressed it. And when I am cutting my strips, first what I do is I don't necessarily take it right off of the bolt. I press it and then I line up the selvages here, and I want to make sure it hangs nice and straight, okay? So it's nice and straight. I don't want to have it be where there's a ripple or a curve, okay? So that's really drastic, but you want to make sure that it hangs really nice. And if you were looking super close, you can see that it doesn't quite match the cut lines for how it came off the bolt, the way that I have it hanging right here. So I have that folded in half, and then before I cut my strips, I fold it in half again. So I'm going to take this edge that I just made, and I'm going to bring it down to the selvage edge. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so I took this fold and I brought it down to the selvage edge, and I'm going to smooth it out. Okay, so now I am ready to cut my 4 2.5 inch strips. So I'm going to take this and go here, 23, and this and go here, 42. I need 4 strips. So I'm going to make my straight cut first, and to make my straight cut, I can line up my bottom perpendicular line here. I'm going to butt up my rotary mate here, move this guy away, make my straight cut. I can either use my Big Daddy or my Big Mama here. Oftentimes that Big Mama is awesome because we're going to make our smallest, you have the smallest piece of acrylic over the smallest piece of fabric. So I'm just going to line up on this straight edge, my 2.5. And I'm going to cut. And cut. Strip number 3. And strip number 4. Okay, there we go. So we have our 4 strips. So we need them 23 inches and 42 inches. You could, if you wanted to, but I'm not going to, use your mat. But what I like to do when I'm doing this is we are going to use our ruler. Okay, so we're going to cut our 23 first. Okay, so when we cut our 23, I can open up my strip because my Big Daddy is 24. Okay, we're going to layer up 2 strips here. Layer them right on top of each other. And we're going to make a straight cut first. Okay, so going to use the perpendicular, line that up, put the second guy on, move this away. Okay, just like that. Now we are going to use, now we only want 23 inches. This is 24 inches, right? So we can line up right here on the 23 and line up this top part on this line. Come over here. Let me show you this on our up close ruler, or up close camera, I'm sorry. Let me make sure here that I have it. Okay, so we have this on the 23, okay, that on our line. Now we're going to come all the way over here, and I'm going to hold it in position and cut. Just like that, 23, perfect. This is left over for something else. For our larger piece, that's a little bit trickier, okay? So we are going to leave our edge folded. And in this case, I'm not particularly worried about having a little bit extra scraps. So I'm going to leave this folded, okay? And 42 divided by 2 is 21. So we're going to line up 21. Okay, let's look here. Okay, we are lined up at the 21. Okay, I didn't do such a great job. As you can see that I need to stack them on top of each other better. So if you are more comfortable, you can do one at a time. Okay, because we don't want to mess this up. So 21, let's do one at a time here. So it's often good to show you how we arrive at something. Okay, so 21. Okay, so we have these set. We're going to now cut our cornerstones. Our cornerstones we're going to cut from our beautiful peppermint fabric. So we're going to need 2 6.5 and 2 5, or 2, I'm sorry, we need 4 2.5 and 4 6.5. Let's look and see what a 2.5 looks like. And we're going to line this up here again. So for the 6.5, that we're going to cut that one first, because then we can cut our 2.5 from our one strip, okay? So we are going to make our straight cut first, line up on the perpendicular line there. Straight cut. 6.5, why 6.5? Because that's the width of the Big Daddy ruler. So I didn't want to think about it, and I thought, let's just make a border that big. So the cornerstones would be the width of that border, right? And let's make a straight cut again. Now both the Big Daddy and the Big Mama are 6.5 inches. These are produced here in Wisconsin and manufactured by, or they're made by Patchworks here. I don't print them here, but we have them printed. And then I was thinking for our 2.5 inch, what does the 2.5 inch look like? Let's see. So it's this wide, just so we can see what it looks like. I think it could be fun to kind of center that. I don't know, do we want it centered here? That could be fun too. Okay, so do you see here how I'm looking at what does 2.5 inches look like? Since we have some fabric to play with, I want to mark this so that I can kind of fussy cut it. Okay, so we're going to go first. I always like to use my perpendicular. We're going to mark here, perpendicular on the bottom. Mark there. I'm going to flip this around, and then we're going to do a 2.5 inch square. Okay. All right, that's kind of fun. And if we look then at the 2.5 this way, well, I think that looks pretty good. What do you think? That's fun. So let's go here, and then we'll go 2.5 inches from there. Okay. So, and do you see I'm eyeballing it? It was nothing like completely precision there. This is fun. All right, so I actually can see it's like half and half. So it's, the next one's lined up perfectly nice. Great. Now I want a total of 4 of these, so I'm going to do that again. Now I think I went a little bit farther here, so I'm just going to make my next cut here all the way through the next peppermint, okay? And then I'm going to come back for my 2.5 inch strip. Well, that is a little different. How do we want it to look? How do we want it to look? I think this would be just fine. Let's do one more cut here. So I was thinking we're just being crazy and fussy. I can just hear some of you at home being like, oh, Julie, it doesn't matter. It looks great. And I just want you to have permission to play in your creative time here. So if you want to be super fussy and super finicky, I give you permission, okay? I don't want you to go so crazy though that you're stunted and not being able to move beyond cutting, okay? So I'm really happy with how these are kind of fussy cut here. For my larger ones, I totally didn't care, okay? All right. And last but not least, we're going to cut our big strips here. And when we cut our big strip, this might surprise you how we're going to cut it. Let's just clean this up here. I like to make a mess. And sometimes creative messes are good, but when we're in our little demo studio space, messes are bad because you lose everything. So when we're cutting our border strips, in this case, we're going to be going the length of the fabric. Now, you totally can piece your borders. I don't mean to say that you can't. This border here, though, what I wanted to do is I wanted to make it as easy as possible for you, and then also teach you about how to cut on the length of your fabric. So when you're cutting on the length of your fabric, I still like to align my selvages, unless if I only want to be, if I'm single fold cutting, then of course I would open it up. But in this case, I'm going to leave it folded. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in half this way, okay? So I am keeping my selvages all lined up, okay? But I'm very interested in my selvages being lined up. And then in this case, I'm going to fold one more time because I like to have the least amount of fabric with the least amount of acrylic. So it is a little thick. If right now I'm at 4 layers, let's do 4 because no, it's still more than my cutting mat. So we don't want to do that. So we're going to be bold and we're going again. Okay, like this. We're laying it down. You want to make sure that your selvages are nice and aligned here. Okay, our selvages are all nice and aligned. So then what we're going to do is line this up, and we actually, so that we can look at it without having to move it, we're going to flip it. So I'm right-handed. So if you're right-handed, you're going to align your selvages on your left side, okay? Then what we're going to do is we are going to line up our perpendicular, okay, right along here. And then we're going to take another longer ruler, okay, because this is longer than our big mama. So we're going to get a longer ruler. I have also a 3.5-inch strip ruler here, my rotary rule. So we're going to use that, okay? So we line this up here, and then I'm going to place this guy on, move this away, and very carefully, and you see how I'm inching my fingers along there, okay? All of my selvages are off. If you wanted, you could save that for a fun project. So because it's folded in half, we're cutting 2 layers at a time. So I need a total of 4 borders, so I'm going to cut twice. We're going to have it be 6.5 inches, so we're going to use the whole width of the ruler. We leave this laying flat. I line it up on the perpendicular on the bottom. I'm going to cut. Then I come over here. We're going to do it again. Line it up. And we're going to cut. And then you have this left over. So this is not necessarily the most fabric efficient way. You have this little bit left over. You could use it in your back. You could make a fun little accent. It just makes it easier for making your borders. So you always have to ask yourself the question of time versus fabric. What's the purpose? What's the end goal? Okay? So in this case, I wanted to have a single piece border, so I went for the length rather than piecing it. Okay? So there's no exact right answer. You have to make that own decision for you. I got that 1.5 yards. If you were going to be piecing the borders, you would be getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 strips times 6. So you'd be getting about 1 yard, a little bit over 1 yard. So you're saving like a 1/2 yard of fabric. It depends on, you know, like this, I love this fabric and I want to do something else fun with it. So give yourself permission to have that little extra oops factor, or to have it be a little bit easier for you. Life is so hard. It's okay to take the easy choice every now and again to make it a little bit easier for yourself. how long are we going to cut these? Let's look at our worksheet again. So our worksheet is saying cut the 4 6.5-inch strips for the outer border. And we cut strips length of fabric for easy borders. And we are going to have width plus 2 plus 2. So that is the width plus 2 for our top and our bottom is going to be 23 plus 2, right? 23 plus 2 is 27. And 42 plus 2 is 46. Just that titch past the width of fabric mark. So that's why we had to go lengthwise, okay? So 42 plus 2, 46. All right, so we can cut, and so both of these we're going to then cut with our easy way where we fold in half and do that method of doing the halvesies, because we don't want to have to move the ruler, right? So I have it layered already, folded in half twice, or folded in half once. So half of 27 is 13.5. If you wanted to, you could move more efficiently, but we are leaving it folded. And if we want to make sure, what we're going to do is we are going to piece the inside just to make sure our measurements end up as we think they should, because I always tell you to measure twice, cut once. So let us actually sew our first inner borders, and then we will come back and measure that outside. So sorry for switching up on you there. I just want to make sure that we would practice this, because if we were making a full-size quilt, I would want you to first cut your outside borders after, right, after you are ready to go. All right, so let me put our other camera back in place, and then we can piece those together. Okay. Well, I will see here. So we're going to put this back in so we can look at this here. Dun, dun, dun. The power of all of the fun technology. There we go. All right, so what we're going to do first is that we are going to put our cornerstones on our short piece, and then we're going to sew the long strips. Okay, so I like to chain piece as I'm working on stuff, so I will actually sew. I'll show you as we're actually doing it. Okay, let's do it. To the machine. Okay, so I have my cornerstones there. I have my top and bottom. So as I put my borders on, I like to do side, side, top, bottom, side, side, top, bottom, unless if otherwise told. So we are going to get this machine ready to go. I just placed that there. If you feel more comfortable pinning, by all means do that. Okay. Right sides together. Now we're going to chain piece this. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking the tail and I'm going to lay my next piece on. I'm just letting the feed dogs take that piece up. And it's time for that second strip. Gonna line it up. I'm using a 7010 Microtech Sharp with 50 weight Orfill cotton thread, and I am sewing with an Eversewn Sparrow 24 with the 1/4 inch foot that is available in the quilting foot accessory pack. The Eversewn Sparrow 25 is an excellent beginner or travel or second machine. I have fancier machines, and this one stitches amazing. So we are going to come over here and just press it first. Gonna wake up our iron here. Now when we are, let's talk about this. How am I gonna press this? So you know that I like to press things open. In this case, we are gonna press to one side. I know. So when I'm working with the panel, I like to press the panel out. So this guy is gonna go in, okay, because we want it to nest in this case. So the panel, the wide part of the panel is going out, and then this is going to go in, okay? So let's come down and let's see. I think I need to clean the sole plate of my iron. You caught me. I use a dry iron most of the time for things like this. I starch ahead of time, and then I don't use that steam at this point when I'm pressing. I don't use the steam. If the steam reactivates the starch, it does fun stuff to it. So that's why I like to use a dry iron. If you prefer a steam iron, you absolutely can, no problem. So that's what these look like. Now what we're going to do is we are going to put the long sides on our panels. Now for this one, I am going to be a stickler, and I am going to be a stickler, and I am going to have you pin. Okay, we're going to pin to our panel, and when we pin and we put borders on, we are going to pin. We're going to start pinning in the center, and then side, and then put a couple more in. Okay, so we have our center and our center. Okay, side. All right, so I pin, in this case, perpendicular to the edge of my fabric with my needle head out, okay? And I have my strip on top. I like to have the largest piece of fabric underneath by the feed dogs and the smallest piece on top. For these long pieces for the end, I did a double pin like this. I can show you overhead here how I'm doing it. Okay, in between. And these are long pins, so I was just going like this, making sure they're nice and flat. Okay, and we'll make sure that the end is connected first. So we're doing this real time here. It is a little slower, but that's all right. You can be sewing along with me or just watching or having me on in the background while you're working on something else, just hearing some fun tips and tricks or having a little bit of company in your sewing room. That's totally all right. We have this side done. Let's go ahead and pin the other side. As I said, when I go to my sewing machine, I really like to work for efficiency. I want to be having fun, but I want it to also make the most purpose of my time because I like getting stuff done. Okay, so finding the center, I'm just finger pressing. I realized I took it out of camera shot there. Okay, so I have my center there, finger pressed it there, and have my center here. Align it right there. Okay. Then we're going to do the end. Now, you might say, Julie, it's so much easier to just take a strip and sew the strip to the end and then just whack off the end. And you know, yes, that might be quicker, but while we're working on this, even though it's quick and easy, we want to practice some good skills. And when you're working with a border like this is the best way to approach attaching borders to your more elaborate patchwork pieces. So why not just apply those good practices to an easy peasy panel, okay? You can practice these concepts on something fun and easy here, and then it's second nature to you by the time you get to a larger project. And then, you know, your friends will say, how did you know that? And you'll say, well, isn't it common knowledge that this is how you do it? Or you could say, oh, I just watched Julie. Okay, well, see, that was fun, quick. Okay, let us hop over to our sewing machine. Okay, here we go. We have, I'm going to get my little pin magnet over here for when I drop the pins, because we don't want to sew over our pins, right? Sewing over the pins is not good for our sewing machine. Okay, nice even 1/4 inch seam here. Not forcing it through, letting the machine feed the fabric. It works really well to leave the machine in needle down position as you take your pins out. I like to take my pins out before they get underneath the foot. Now remember I said we trimmed that 1/4 inch so that we were going to go just a little bit into the color. So the intention is that we don't have to worry about hitting that white space. You know, sometimes if you hit that white space not quite right, then it looks uneven all the way around. So by dipping just a titch into that printed color, we don't have to worry about going blind for that printed line. Stitching on a printed line would be the only reason why I might flip it and have the narrower piece of fabric on the bottom side so that I'd be able to see that line and stitch on it or to one side of it. So do you see how nice this is all lining up for us? It's so wonderful. And we're almost to the end of side 1. Now, if you end up and your end and you have this giant tail or you're short, reevaluate before you continue to the second side. All right, but you can see here, I don't know if you can see that. We're going to open it up quick to see. We have that nice space in between and we don't see any white. So that's super awesome. Let's go to the other side. Oh, that was our iron. It's being safe. Irons are so safe when they turn off on us. Like, it's not fashionable to like have anything hurt. I mean, not her, I said that wrong. Anyhow, it's very safe to have a nice iron because then you really, I still like to make sure when I leave the room that I unplug the iron, but it is a nice extra fail-safe when they turn off. Sometimes they're annoying because you want them to stay hot all afternoon, but just remember that it really is a good thing. So I shouldn't give the iron such a hard time. All right, we're coming down the home stretch here on this long side. So little panel quilts like this, you can practice quilting or you can send off to your favorite quilter. Either way is no problem. Sometimes making things like this is a nice way to be able to practice if you had wanted to try some straight line or free motion quilting. There's less time and money invested than if you are working on a big pieced quilt. So I always invite you to take those least risk opportunities to try new skills. If you were looking to make a panel quilt as a fun little cuddle quilt, using a cuddle minky on the back is super fun and soft. Something like this you would be able to get away with a single width of fabric for your backing. So that is a really nice way of doing things. And then if you had wanted to, you could also have it be a self-facing where you would bring the backing forward. Okay, well, we did a pretty good job here. All right, let's go over to the ironing board and press it out. Okay, so we're going to reignite our iron again. And remember I said, so this we pressed in, right? So how are we going to press this guy? I'm going to press it out. So when I'm pressing it out, the easiest way for me to do that is to lay it panel side down, okay, panel side down, and then we're going to lift this up and over, okay? Just like this, light press. I'm going to press that open there. I'm going to move it down because I'm working on a smaller surface here. If you're working on a traditional ironing board, you might have enough room here to actually do the whole thing. This little cushioned square and blocker is a really nice addition to a sewing space. It's great to have next to your sewing machine. Also great for travel. It's bigger than a cut and press, the backside of a cut and press. So this is just an ironing surface or pressing surface. It doesn't have a cutting mat on the other side. Okay, see there how we're pressing. We're pressing. We're not ironing, we're pressing. Want to make sure that our fabric wasn't tucked underneath there. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, just like that. So now what we're going to do is we are going to attach our top and bottom. It's not directional. So we're going to align, we're going to pin this intersection here, the end, and then a couple in the middle. So we're going to start with the intersection. Come back to the intersection over here. It's the most important. Now, if we measured and cut right, this will all fit perfectly, which it does. Yay! Measure twice, cut once, right? All right, couple more pins here. And then we'll do the top and the bottom as well. These long fine pins are really nice. Also flat head pins can be very nice. Okay, let's do the other side. Once you get going, this goes together super quick. All right, lined up here. Pin. 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 Now, why are we pinning? We want to make sure as we're piecing this on that we don't stretch it. So it helps by giving a little speed bumps along the way. We'll just finish it up here. And on this side. All right, are we ready? We're ready. Okay, let's go back to the sewing machine. So when you're sewing, what do you like to have on in the background? Are you listening to Christmas music? Do you like to rock it out to heavy metal? I have just started listening to some classical music again. I used to listen to a lot more classical music, and then I just stopped for a while, and it has been so enjoyable. I mean, I love really music types, everything from, it would really surprise you. I mean, so I listen to pop and country and a little bit of heavy metal. Love my Christmas music. I'll probably start listening to a little Christmas music now that it's after Thanksgiving. I'm not one of the early adopters that starts listening to it the second that Halloween is over. And then my guilty pleasure is listening to new wave dance music. You never know what you're going to learn when you watch these videos. So I listen to, I'm a Sirius XM subscriber, and they have a program on Saturday night called the Saturday Night Safety Dance.